So what if I told you the most groundbreaking thing about a tech company wasn't its code, but its org chart? Sounds kind of strange, right? But we're seeing this new breed of company that's built less like your typical move-fast startup and way more like, say, a Swiss bank. Let's get into it.
So, say hello to JusTechRun Systems Inc. Now, on the surface, yeah, they look like a tech company. They're building some really advanced AI and fintech platforms. But the real story? Well, you gotta look under the hood. This whole thing was engineered from day one with the kind of precision you'd normally only see in high-stakes institutional finance. We're talking a whole different animal from your typical startup.
And get this, their tagline is institutional intelligence, adaptive innovation. Now that isn't just some slick marketing copy, it's literally their core design principle. And notice what comes first, institutional. That one word is the key, you guys. It unlocks everything else about how they operate.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're gonna peel back the layers of JusTechRun, just like an onion. First, we'll touch on what they actually build. Then we dive into the really juicy part, their secret blueprint. We'll unpack that whole corporate structure, see how it powers their compliance and security, and then, at the end, we'll tie it all together and see why any of this actually matters.
Okay, first things first. Before we get into the how this company is built, which is the really wild part, we need to understand what they're actually making. Because their products, they give us some major clues as to why their structure has to be so incredibly robust.
So you can see they're playing in some seriously high-stakes arenas. You've got the JIFI engine, that's their adaptive AI for fintech and risk analysis. I mean, think about it. One tiny mistake there could have huge consequences. Then there's Jules World, which is this amazing platform for neurodiverse kids that doesn't rely on reading, but that means it's handling some of the most sensitive personal data imaginable. They've also got an AI-powered CRM where compliance isn't some afterthought, it's baked right into the system's DNA. And to top it all off, a tokenization architecture for creating digital assets, basically the plumbing for the future of finance. You see the pattern here, right? These aren't just fun little apps. This is critical, heavy-duty infrastructure for highly regulated spaces.
And that brings us to the real story here, because it's not just about what they build. The truly revolutionary part is how the company itself is constructed. This is where it gets really, really interesting.
So what's the secret sauce, right? What is it that makes JusTechRun so fundamentally different from that classic Silicon Valley mantra of move fast and break things? I mean, that's what we've been taught for decades.
This, right here. This is their secret. And I want you to look closely because this isn't just some boring org chart. This is the company's core innovation. The way it's legally and financially put together, that's its most powerful feature. Seriously. So let's break this thing down.
All right, let's really dive into this blueprint. We're going to dissect it piece by piece, starting at the very top and working our way down to see how it all fits together.
Okay, so what you're looking at is basically a three-layer hierarchy. Right at the top, you've got a trust. It's the 100% beneficial owner. Now, why does that matter? It's all about long-term vision and stability, not about a quick flip or a messy pivot. Step down and you have the holding company. It owns all the equity, and its job is to insulate the big-picture financial and strategic stuff from the daily grind. And then at the bottom, there's the operating company, JusTechRun itself. That's where the code gets written and the business actually happens. So you see, each layer has one clear job: protect, own, and operate. Super clean.
Okay, to get the next part of this puzzle, we have to talk about something called an SPV, or a special purpose vehicle. The simplest way to think about it is like a legal lockbox. It's a totally separate company created for one specific reason: to hold and protect valuable assets or financial risk. So if something bad happens to the main company, whatever is inside that SPV is safe. It's basically a financial firewall.
And JusTechRun uses these SPVs brilliantly. They're like digital vaults for all their crown jewels. You've got one SPV holding all the intellectual property for the JustWorld platform. Another one protects the core AI algorithms for the JIFI engine. They even have a separate one for their private membership group. By doing this, they isolate and protect every single piece of valuable IP with, like, surgical precision. It makes the whole operation incredibly resilient.
Okay, so that's the how. We've seen the nuts and bolts of the structure. But now, let's connect the dots to the why. Because this whole thing, it's not just complicated for the sake of being complicated. No. This structure is the bedrock for an absolutely institutional-grade security and compliance engine. And here's the kicker, the really crucial point. The goal here was never just to be a tech company. The goal was to be bank-ready and government contract-ready
from day one, from the very first moment. This entire structure is purpose-built to create absolute trust with the most demanding partners you can imagine.
And that philosophy, it extends all the way down to their cybersecurity. They use what's called a zero-trust architecture. It sounds intense, and it is. The principle is simple. Never trust, always verify. You assume nothing and no one is safe by default. Doesn't matter if they're inside your network or out. Every single time someone or something tries to access anything, it has to be strictly verified, no exceptions. Just look at the difference when you put it side by side with a typical startup. Most startups, they throw up a basic firewall, use some passwords, and kind of hope for the best. JusTechRun, they verify every single user, every device, every application, every time. Instead of just building a wall around the outside, they grant tiny, specific permissions only when needed. And this is huge, they completely segment the network between all their different parts. The main company, the treasury, each SPV, they're all in their own little bubbles. It's a totally different way of thinking, built for absolute resilience, not just for moving fast. And listen, this isn't just some abstract idea on a whiteboard. This framework is built from the ground up to meet some of the toughest federal standards that exist. You see things like NIST 800-171. Don't worry about the numbers, just know that's the government's gold standard playbook for protecting sensitive information. And then CMMC Level 3, that basically means they're certified to handle high-impact work for the Department of Defense. So we're not just talking about good security here, we're talking about being provably, certifiably trustworthy at a national security level.
All right, so we've gone way deep into the architecture. It's complex, for sure. But what does it all mean in the real world? Why does it matter? Well, let's talk about the payoff. This is where all that structure turns into credibility, and that credibility fuels some serious financial growth.
And it all started from a really solid, clean foundation. A $50,000 capital contribution from the holding company. No debt. You know, this wasn't some massive, splashy VC round. It was a disciplined, strategic amount of cash to make sure everything was built the right way from the very beginning. And look what happens when you build on that kind of foundation. The projected growth is, well, it's huge. We're talking about going from $250,000 in revenue in year one up to a projected $1.2 million in year two. And that kind of trajectory, that's only possible because the company's structure itself gives big enterprise clients and government agencies the confidence they need to sign on the dotted line.
And really, this brings it all full circle, back to the main point of this whole thing. That trust to holding company to SPV structure, it's not just boring administrative paperwork. It is the company's #1 competitive advantage. It creates a level of risk protection and regulatory clarity that most companies just can't dream of having right from the start.
So I guess it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In a tech world that's just obsessed with moving fast, with speed above all else, is the future really going to be built on speed? Or is it going to be built on something else? Something more like this, an architecture of pure, verifiable trust.